Hi, I'm Rob, and what I'm about to share with you is deeply disturbing. This is the painful story of how I lost my father during Katrina. And it was not the storm's enormous force that killed him, not the massive floods that followed, and not even the lack of food, water, or shelter. It was something no amount of weapons, bullets, or military training could protect him from, and it's guaranteed to strike you during any crisis. I'm about to tell you everything there is to know about this silent killer, and I'll even share with you what I'm doing and what you can do starting today to protect your family. After years of research, I realized that this is the only way to beat the odds when the death toll rises into the millions, and this bulletproof method is guaranteed to keep you safe, protected, and to shield your family from any type of crisis or disaster. Looking back, I would have killed to have this life-saving information. So listen carefully. After Hurricane Katrina hit, I thought we survived the worst of it, but little did I know about the dramatic twist of events that would eventually lead to my father's passing. You see, even though he had no visible wounds, and despite the fact that he was healthy as an ox after the storm hit, my father started getting sicker and sicker. And as you're about to see, taking him to the ER was the biggest mistake I could have made. When we got to the hospital, the smell of death was overwhelming. Everywhere I looked, corpses covered in white sheets filled the halls. The hospital was packed like a sardine can, and people were barely clinging on to their lives. Women, children, and grown men alike. All of them were doomed, coughing, wheezing, and bleeding. I won't get into more details. Let's just say it was like I'd walked into a horror movie. And things started to get even worse. To make the long story short, my dad and I stood there all day begging for someone to help us. We were forced to sleep on the floor and hope for the best while he continued to get worse, shivering and vomiting the entire time. Meanwhile, doctors and nurses were literally running from one place to the other and still couldn't keep up with the workload. They could only treat patients in the most critical conditions. In fact, after the hurricane, doctors and nurses were convicted for speeding up the death process in certain patients because they couldn't keep up. And on that night, somewhere between 3 to 4 a.m., my dad died in my arms. Days later, I discovered he died from a small wound on his ankle. He'd caught a Vibrio infection from the contaminated floodwater. Imagine how I felt, knowing my father died because of a tiny cut on his ankle. I was enraged and revolted by the doctors and our entire health system. I felt stupid and ashamed for being so impotent myself, and for being so naive to have this blind trust in our health care. If only I knew what I know today, I know for a fact I could have saved him. And this is the exact reason I'm sharing this story with you right now. I want to hand you the information I now have in order to make sure you know exactly what to do in the extreme case that something similar ever happens to yourself or one of your loved ones. Look, I used to believe the biggest threats in any crisis are the lack of food, water, or shelter. But after my father's death, I soon realized that all of these things are useless if you don't have the proper tools to take care of yourself. The truth is, the number one killer in any crisis is disease and infection. And it doesn't matter if it's an earthquake, terrorist attack, or the collapse of the dollar. One of the first things to kill most people in a crisis is an illness or disease. It took me years to get over what happened, and I needed answers. I talked to doctors and friends, and I researched for months. Fact is, I couldn't believe the jaw-dropping facts I discovered. Most Americans think our medical system is the same as other first-world countries. That's what I used to think. But in fact, our medical system is a ticking bomb waiting to explode. The American College of Emergency Physicians, ACEP, rates our medical system with a D+, and in some states it barely reaches a startling F, and that's when things go smoothly. So whenever a disaster or a major emergency event hits, your hospital will be overflowing and the staff probably won't be able to help you. During Katrina, for instance, non-threatening illnesses turned deadly because of lack of supplies and medicine. Imagine what would happen if we faced a national disaster. Hospitals would be packed to the brim within hours, or even worse, closed down for good across the country. Nobody would be able to treat people because our medical system isn't even prepared for the patients they get daily. And even if you'd try to treat yourself with medicine, there's little chance to get it because pharmacies will either shut down or get ransacked by addicts. Trucks carrying medical supplies stop delivering whenever there's a crisis, be it the next terrorist attack, natural disaster, or economic meltdown, and pharmacies are emptied within minutes. Here's the worst part. When the hurricane hit New Orleans, it knocked out both power and running water. And when the grid is down, sewage and water systems fail. Raw sewage runs into the streets and contaminates the water supply beyond repair. And all these play a major part in shattering your health. As I already told you, that's what happened to my father. The bottom line is, with no clean running water, no power, no medication, and no hospitals to control the spread of diseases, you and your family will be in serious danger. And if that wasn't enough, here's the harsh reality. Today, the biggest risk for global catastrophe isn't what it was 50 years ago. It doesn't look anything like nuclear war. In fact, it doesn't look like anything at all. It's invisible to the naked eye. Part of the reason for that is that our country spent a huge amount on war prevention and military force, but we've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic. In 2014, the world avoided a global Ebola outbreak, thanks to thousands of selfless health workers, plus, frankly, some very good luck. As you look at what went on, the problem was that we didn't have a system to prevent it or quarantine it because we're oblivious to this threat. 10,000 people died from Ebola, and there's 3 reasons it didn't spread more. Health workers who found the people infected and prevented the virus from spreading. The nature of this particular virus, because Ebola does not spread through the air, and by the time it's contagious, most people are so sick that they're already hospitalized. And luck, the virus didn't get to urban areas. Next time, we're probably not going to be so lucky, and these 3 reasons could work against us.